Are you tired of watching our nation slowly destroy itself? When it appears that the value of life is only high if and when you agree with the person, we have a problem. What if the best and most effective way of changing things for the better is for people like you to step up? What if the only way to change things for the better is to be the change you hope to see? What if it requires speaking up, not going with the flow, taking action, and doing what's required, even if it isn't popular, even if the masses don't agree with you, even if everybody isn't on your side, even if the world doesn't understand? If you know for a fact that you got light in your heart, but the world is constantly being filled with darkness, it's time to wake up and get active. This is the infinite evolution. Because in a world where negativity appears to know no limits, those with the biggest hearts, the brightest lights, and who have it in them need to step up and take the action. This is the infinite evolution. Once we start to lose our humanity, our ability to empathize, our capacity to listen, our willingness to simply be kind, you know we got a problem. And at a certain point, the best of us needs to step up and not just say something, but do something about it. Not be afraid to make some waves, not be afraid to ruffle a few feathers and change the world for the better. What's the point of having a vision or even a future if we lose sight of what matters most? This is the infinite evolution. In times of tragedy and loss, that's when you find out what a person's real character is. It wasn't that long ago that in this very country, we saw a person who was popular, prominent, but very controversial have their life taken from them right in front of their family. And the reactions were all over the place. There were those who showed compassion and understanding because they knew that the value of a life had been taken and it's not something to play with. But there were others who made jokes of it, who made fun of it, who said things like, "I'm not saying he deserved it, but I'm not saying he was asking for it." But anytime you got to put a disclaimer on something, you can basically ignore it. Anytime somebody says to you, "No disrespect, but I'm not calling you stupid," but you can basically ignore everything they said beforehand because you know it's not true. The disclaimer is simply to soften the blow of what they really want to say. And now here we are, only months later, with the same situation happen, only in reverse. And the reactions are equally as ugly. The reactions are equally as nasty. We are not valuing life, and it's a problem. As far as I'm concerned, these are two sides of the very same coin. Self-centered, petty, sore losers, incapable of understanding perspectives outside of their own, and rigid and unwilling to change for anything other than whatever they decide is important. That's a problem. And so today we want to talk about the idea of political sickness, of social disease, and what we can do about it. So today we want to talk about the idea of speaking up even when it isn't even, of stepping up and saying what's right even when everybody else is doing what's wrong. When the value of life only matters if you agree with the person and the way they lived, you got a problem. When you believe that the actions of a person who's willing to take a life that wasn't theirs are justified just because you disagree with the person and their actions, you know you got a problem. We've gone too far. That's exactly what I'm seeing. That's exactly what our country is feeling, and it's exactly what we cannot allow to go by. Both sides appear to be poor examples of what our country really needs right now. Love, compassion, healing. You don't get to claim to be a person who's loving, caring, empathetic, passionate about human life if you only care about it if and when you agree with the person who lost it. As far as I can tell, the two extreme sides of this coin are exactly what our country doesn't need. This is why it's so important that the good must speak up, because the people who are emotional and willing to put out the most wicked things on this earth are never going to be quiet. And the worst part of it all is we see it from both sides of this political extreme. Neither side will take accountability for anything wrong they've done. Both sides are willing to demonize the other when their person is the victim. But what happened to value in human life? Both sides appear to be perfect examples of what our country doesn't need. Zombies and sheep who refuse to think for themselves. Followers who behave and pretend as though they have no real autonomy of their own. Like they always have to follow the party line even when they know for a fact that what's being pushed ain't quite right. The number of conversations I have with people on both extremes of this dichotomy who are completely uninformed or unwilling to be challenged or questioned is truly scary. I have friends on all sides of the political spectrum, and I'm a person who loves to have dialogue. And when I'm asking questions, why do you think this? How are you justifying that? No one is asking questions that are forcing you to think critically. Everyone is living inside of a bubble. No one is thinking for themselves. And so the echo chambers that we've created are turning us into monsters. And somebody has to step up and say something. Because once we lose sight of what matters most, what do we really have? Far too many in our society are unwilling to think, let alone question, anything or anyone that comes from their party lines. But what if the solution and the way to victory requires us to look in the mirror and challenge ourselves a bit more? Maybe the reason why society looks and feels the way it does is because too many people look in that mirror and don't hold themselves accountable. They don't question and challenge, what could I have done differently? What could I say to make the world better? What am I doing and how is it impacting this world? You can't consistently put out negativity and nastiness and then when tragedy besieges you, expect love and compassion. And it happens on both both sides. The amount of adults who struggle to see beyond their own noses is truly astounding to me, and it's not something I'm willing to sit idly by and allow to continue to impact this world in a negative way. Somebody has to start to speak up and take action. This is the infinite evolution. If you're a person who believes in standing up for justice, stand up for it at all times. Not just when the person who loses their life is somebody whose lifestyle you agree with. Because if that's the way you move, you're not a moral person, you're not a just person, you're a judgmental person, you're a phony person, you're a hypocrite, and you're exactly what the world doesn't need more of. We gotta learn more compassion. We gotta spread more love and light. We have enough negativity in this world. It's time for something different. This is the infinite evolution. We have enough negativity. We have enough hate. We have enough people who are willing to celebrate the downfall of others. This is why we must speak up. This is why we must spread light. And this is the infinite evolution. When your loyalty to a political party exceeds your loyalty to the human race, we have a problem. And somebody has to step up and say it. Somebody has to be willing to acknowledge that too many of us have gone too far. And too many of us are contributing to a world that's not helping our future become better. And if we continue to ignore the problem, it's only gonna grow. Either way, a decision is gonna get made. Which one will you choose? Inactivity or stepping up and taking action? Silence or allowing your voice to be heard even when it isn't popular or easy? So often we talk about mental health and illness, but what about political health and sickness? What about those who have developed a disease of the mind where their political views cloud their judgment and prevent them from valuing and appreciating the beauty that is human life? What happens when your political views have become so toxic and dangerous that you'll justify almost anything if the person taking the actions that we know are wrong agree with your political views? So often we hear people talk about the idea of mental health, but also mental illness. But you never hear people talk about the idea of political health and political sickness. What happens when the disease you suffer from is political in nature? It's going beyond physical or mental, it's societal. Years ago, as the world fought through the pandemic, we heard constant dialogue about taking care of our health, our mental and physical, and how important it is to make sure that we're maintaining our health. But what if there was another component that's impacting people just as much? What about the idea of being so strongly attached to a political party that you're willing to forego the value of human life simply to justify what you think is correct? What about the idea of political health? What about the idea of social wellness? Because these things matter as well. When it comes to catching the cold, the flu, or even COVID-19, to a certain extent, you have to be in physical proximity. The real danger of social and political illness is they spread far more easily and quickness than any physical illness ever could. Well, if all it takes is a simple post, status, tweet, story, update, whatever, and you can spread your political disease, you can spread your social illness, that's when you know we got a problem. And that's when the people with the most light need to keep that same energy. The same way people who suffer from political illness can spread their negativity, people who are in good political health also need to spread their light. Asking for the very same empathy you chose not to show is the epitome of hypocrisy, but also there's some political illness there. When you see people celebrate and justify the loss of a life simply because they didn't agree with the person who lost it, you know we got a problem. And that's a person who's probably suffering from political disease, from social illness, and it's up to the best of us to do something about it. And you hear people who are upset and angry that they weren't shown the very empathy that they chose not to show. You know we got a problem, and you know that's a person who's suffering from social illness. When those who once danced on the grave of someone who lost their life far too soon are now asking for empathy and understanding, you know we have a problem, and you know that the nation as a whole is suffering from some sort of affliction. When you see others being negative, be the light. When you see others spreading hate, spread the love. We have enough of the negativity. It's time for something different. The value of life remains precious. The moment we begin to lose sight of that is the moment we begin to lose our humanity. The moment we allow our political beliefs to chip away at our ability to empathize and show love to others, even if they weren't on the same aisle as us politically, that's when you know we lost it. That's when it's the perfect time to step up, be heard, and take the actions that will reverse all of the negativity. We gotta step up. We must be alert, and we cannot allow those who have evil intentions to gain any more momentum. Spread the light. This is the infinite evolution. Every time we begin to justify, accept, support, minimize, undermine the loss of a life when it wasn't necessary, we become a little darker. We become a little colder. We lose a little bit more of ourselves, a little bit more of the thing that makes us so unique, that unites us and bonds us. As a people, we're so much stronger when we're united, and we're so easy to topple when we're divided, which might be why so many of the powers that be seem to be hell-bent on keeping us that way. The longer we're separated, the less dangerous we are. When your loyalty to your political party is stronger than your loyalty to the human race, we have an issue. The longer we remain divided, the less of a threat we become. The longer it takes you to realize that they're separating you and confusing you intentionally, the longer it'll take you to realize that you've been bamboozled. And you also become just like the very people you despise. Because when a man can lose his life in front of his wife and kids, and the best response you come up with is, I'm not saying he deserved it, but I'm not saying he asked for it, but you know we got a problem. Just like when a woman who's a mother with a family loses her life in a situation that was 100% preventable, and you celebrate, you pretend as though it was justified, you try to make it seem as though there was no other way for things to go down, you know we're going a little bit too far. What's the point of having a vision if you aren't willing to speak up and do what it takes in order to make sure our future is as bright as possible? If you know you have goodness on your heart, now is the time to speak up. If you know you're not okay with the evil that's being spread in this world, step up and be the light. This is the infinite evolution.